All right, so welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. My name is Eric Deepen, and I'm sitting all by myself in our sound studio, staring at my phone, talking to Pastor Andy Littleton of Mission Church. We are the sequestered pastors attempting to talk about life and figure it out.
Yep, we're talking about the coronavirus. We especially start out by talking about this church in Tampa, Florida that got a bunch of attention and how the media's responded to them. And, we have some thoughts on that. And we talk a little bit about how we're handling things later in the podcast. So check it out. We appreciate all of you listening, tuning in. And this is going to be, this is a Zoom call, so you're going to hear some little clicks and hiccups that come from internet connection and such, and we are sorry, but also not that sorry, because it's just what we're all doing these days. And so thanks for tuning in, and enjoy the podcast.
Yep.
So, man, I'm just... Made some eggs and some sausage here.
Oh, it's good.
It's okay. Kind of made it in a rush,
It's not a Michelin star egg and sausage.
No. No. When I hear Michelin star, I think of tires, and it doesn't make me, it's not appetizing to me.
Yeah, I've always thought it's a weird thing. I've never really researched as to why why it's a big deal. But
tire brand has nothing to do with it, right?
No, I think you get 1 or 2 Michelin stars. I don't know if you can get 3, but even get 1 is remarkable.
Really? Yeah.
I think there's like 5 Michelin star restaurants in Tucson.
Okay. Do you know what it is?
I don't know, but Prep and Pastry may be a Michelin star restaurant.
I think I would have heard about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I looked it up once. I can't remember.
Okay. Well, one of these days we'll share that into the public.
I'm sure somebody can text us that, our listenership has really dived since the coronavirus, oddly enough. So,
well, I mean, there's only 2 weeks of that, and one of them we didn't really record. So,
yeah, but we did go from 240 listeners a week to 72. So,
yeah, maybe that means that if people are bored, we're not the people they want to listen to.
Well, we are just talking about Michelin stars and eggs.
Yes. And the great thing is that I have edit power finally, so I can cut this junk off if I want to.
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, power trip. Anyway, man. Well, let's jump into it. Are you cool with talking about this whole evangelical pastor coronavirus thing just in the last couple of days? And of course it'll news cycle away, but I think people's reaction to it is indicative of something. You're making some cool noises in your world over there. I don't know what's going on. I think it's you.
No, I don't think so. I'm like completely still, and I'm in the sound room. So,
well, just the joys of video chat.
What kind of sound am I making?
Nah, don't worry about it. So I saw in the news a couple of days ago, the church, The River, right, was shared that they were still, meeting in full force during coronavirus. And then yesterday in the news, the pastor of The River, which is in Florida, was arrested.
Yeah.
And, yeah, and then a New York Times article came out, I believe yesterday, and it was labeled "The Road to Coronavirus Hell Was Paved by Evangelicals." And it was in the New York Times, and it referenced this church and Jerry Falwell Jr. and others who are denying the scientific validity of what's being done. And then that article, the title was changed because I think they got some pushback on that. And I just this morning saw some people who normally I don't see kind of spouting about politics, but I saw some people from church circles were pretty upset about that article. So let's talk about that. How people are perceiving Christians at this time. What?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I was listening to a podcast, and it was probably recorded a week ago, or last week before this last Sunday, but it was by two Northern Seminary professors, so in Chicago, and they were saying they were doing a little conversation about suffering and the coronavirus and how the church cares for people, and they brought it. One of them is a pastor of a church in a economically oppressed place. Well, they both are. One is in a food desert in Chicago, and they were saying the African American church is still meeting, and this was a week ago. And
now I should note, this is not the people that these articles are taking aim at. They're taking at white evangelicals. Yeah.
And one of the comments they were very adamant about, both pastors, that they didn't agree, but at the same time, and one of them was African American, he was saying, people in my congregation say I'm more likely to get shot by a bullet than I am to get the coronavirus. Mm-hmm. And he was talking a lot about how the culture is built around the building itself, and you may not own your own property, but you have cared for the church building, and the African American church has been the center of information for that community for so long that it's hard. It's like, so there's a resistance to being told that they can't gather simply for those reasons.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that going on. Obviously, I don't think it's just churches. I think there's probably a lot of other groups that are gathering for similar reasons. But I do think that piece is definitely important to consider, and not really being discussed. I think if you've got a group of people that are oppressed, this kind of critique's not going to get lobbed at them right now.
No, not. And I think that,
thank goodness. I mean,
yeah. Well, I think again too, we're also not going to lob. I mean, I just find it interesting that Mardi Gras is the reason that things are spreading in New Orleans, which is certainly it has some religious connection, but it's a pagan thing, and it's what spread the virus. But and it was because the mayor and the governor mishandled things. Mm-hmm. And of course, they're just pushing it on up and blaming it on the federal government. But to me, there's just a lot of stupidity in general and arrogance, and those traits fall on both Christians and non-Christians.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so I think you also see sort of the Pentecostal anti-science, and I think this is the thing, is they keep labeling it evangelical, but it really is it's a branch with evangelicalism, not that is anti-science and anti. And I know it's not just the Pentecostal movement, but extreme Pentecostalism is where you're finding these people.
That's exactly what I thought. Right when I heard about this church, the River, I thought to myself, I'll bet you this is a Word of Faith church. And I didn't, I almost felt bad about that. I went, oh, look at me, assuming this. And I went on the website, and it was a pretty tame website. It was more of a megachurch, so they kind of landed a little light on some of that stuff. But when you dug down into the doctrine, there it was, sure enough, that the prosperity and healing are really high on their list. And when you dug into a little bit of what they were saying, you could tell that this is definitely something they believe. And so whether they're anti-science or not, they definitely assume that an evidence of the true faith is that God miraculously, supernaturally works above and beyond science. And if that doesn't happen, there's an illegitimacy to your faith. And when I saw that, I went, right. So of course they're going to do this, because if, it's almost a testing of their faith if they don't, right? And I've had exposure to these groups throughout my life, and I disagree with that, but I understand what they're thinking. And so all of a sudden it made sense. But what I thought was definitely unfair in the media coverage was for that to be called evangelicals. But it doesn't surprise me. It's just that definitely isn't the going sense. I mean, we work with a group of pastors here in Tucson, 35 of them. And I almost every single one immediately quit gathering out of the principle of loving your neighbor, almost all of them. And so, I thought that was kind of an unfair shot, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And they did somewhere in the article say that this doesn't, characterize all.
They did.
Evangelicals, and I think they even said majority, but
most people get the headline in the first paragraph, right? Right. So they did say that. It just didn't come through.
No, it was
clickbait culture.
Yeah. Well, and Time Magazine, the other article you sent me, which I had already read,
which I haven't read yet, by the way. I sent you that because it looked good. I haven't read it. The Tom Wright, I haven't.
Yeah. But it also was a clickbait, title. Christianity has no answer for the coronavirus, which, it's basically just a call to lament out that, even as far back as David and Job, there's no answer, that God doesn't just come along and wrap everything up in a bow in life.
Totally.
And so, which
I didn't read the article, but I think I knew that's what it was about as soon as I saw the title. Yeah. Right. So how would you respond if somebody just, saw you in your yard and they were walking by and they were like, oh man, I'm really disappointed with how you Christians are responding to the coronavirus, of course they say this from 72 feet away.
You come up with these examples that are completely never going to happen in my life, but
well, because look at you. You look. This is. You look like an obvious evangelical pastor, and so all they have to do is just look at you and go, "He's one of them," right? And they can, So somebody does that.
What would say something, like, "I'm sorry that's your experience. That has been mine."
That's not dismissive at all.
Look, a part of it is that we have a particular character as a president, regardless of how you view him, who I think actually is part wise and actually says and does things that are, he actually are good and turn out to be good, and also just knows how to speak to his base and to kind of, I don't want to say pander, but I'm going to pander to a particular base. And
people who say Donald Trump is an idiot, I do not agree with Donald Trump in a majority of the time, I feel, but he knows how to talk to the people who vote for him.
Yes.
He's not an idiot. Yeah.
And, I mean, it's sort of the more I have prayed for him and for leaders, the more compassion I have for him. I think there's a lot of foolishness in what he's done. But I also think it's rather unfair if you've ever just listened to the press conferences that he sits through. I mean, I think if some of the questions that were asked of Donald Trump were asked of Obama or of Ronald Reagan or Bill Clinton, they probably would have had just people come in and drag those reporters out. How are you dealing with the coronavirus thing? How would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? That's the stupidest question I've ever heard in my life.
8.5.
I mean, like, what are you supposed to say to things like that? And those are just typical questions. And I know the press is frustrated with his, everything is great, positivity for everything, we're the best, rah, rah.
Don't you think it's very obvious that Trump is campaigning through the coronavirus crisis? I mean, in like pointing to all the things he's doing, it's the only way he can campaign right now. And I think
it's sad.
It's weird. Yeah. But I do think that's what's happening. So
right.
Unfortunately, I don't like that, but I look and I go, again, he's being strategic. I don't love that.
Right.
But I guess he's playing the game well. Like, ooh.
Right. Well, I think that my feeling is the coronavirus shows that, this isn't Donald Trump's fault. This is the fault of an ill-prepared government over the last 15 to 20 years and how it responds to things. I mean, we can go as far back as, what happened in New Orleans with the floods. We're just not a government that knows, our priorities are in the wrong place.
Our military is ready for the end of the world, right? But our disaster response is not. Yeah.
Right. And our military, like if they were to step in, and when you see them step in, like the Corps of Engineers, you're like, oh, shoot, these guys know what they're doing, and they could fix the problem if we just let them take over.
Yeah.
Because they are prepared. Yeah, we are prepared for the end of the world. But a lot of times it's just that we are more interested in making money and extending our power than we are creating well thought out infrastructures and things like that.
That's something I thought of I thought that this is really, it's an interesting thing because you can see I would say that you can see in conservatives right now in the desire to get the economy back going. And I'm not saying this is all wrong, but you can see that like producing, monetary wealth is like priority one, and that, life and saving vulnerable people matters, but it feels like priority 2 or 3. It just feels like when I'm watching this that it's unfortunate, but it's just like watching Democrats and Republicans do what they do. I mean, it's people who are all for capitalism are prioritizing that. People who are, advocating for the vulnerable are prioritizing that. And I really wish for a different response that was a lot more nuanced and, didn't pick or choose one of the two. And I don't think anybody's trying to pick or choose one of the two. I just think you can see the emphasis. I don't know. That's just one observation I've had. But if you could change the narrative, you didn't really answer you did answer my question. What you would say to the guy 72 feet away from you. But if you could change the narrative and see an article come out about the church that would reflect what you want the church to be and how you want the church to respond, what would that article be?
Well, the problem is that I don't even know if I want an article about how the church is responding, because I think we as the church have been concerned for so long with optics over the last years. Honestly, I think what is happening, and I think it's a good thing, is that pastors are in some ways being pushed into having to deal with their flock and their neighborhood. And I think that the megachurch pastor has to do that, and so does the small church pastor. And I think that is a powerful thing. It's a reorienting thing. I don't like the way God is using the virus to do that, but that is the process in which he is. And so to me, it's like, well, okay, if there was an article, I just wanted to document the thousands and thousands and thousands of small church pastors who are caring for their people.
Yeah.
And trying to make sure that people who they're connected to who are not in their church are getting some food or getting, but I mean, heck, there's story after story of people in our community who are shopping for their neighbor or, reconnecting with their family or struggling under the hardship of not working, or being sick, and so I don't know, I want that to be the story, but I don't really want to be a story.
Well, these are hypothetical, Eric. Nobody's going to come do this story because of this, poorly executed podcast. Don't worry, you're good. You're safe.
Well,
I'm going to push it to the New York Times, but I doubt it's going to get very far.
Okay. Well, no, but I think that's the powerful thing is, the church will survive crazy, evangelical, highly charismatic, arrogant people. It will survive them. They might make it harder for us.
It'll survive me as well.
Yeah.
What's this look like for you when it comes to actually engaging with your people and the crazy few weeks we've had?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like there's sort of two things. I mean, we jumped on it really fast 3-4 weeks ago and started trying to figure out how we're going to keep connected and stay connected. So there's that, and just the different things that we're trying to provide internally in the sense of calling people and video chatting and converting over all of the different things that we do, like small groups into video groups and all that. So at least there's visual connection. Making sure we have people consistently being checked on the best we can do, and being able to communicate leadership wise, and having Slack and having it relatively active in our church has been really helpful in this crisis, because people are just snap on the Slack and talking about what's going on. Sometimes
it's more Slack now, which I hate.
So that's good, and I think we've hit road bumps in that we're not geared up to be video driven, and so that's for our services and things like that, and even to do that halfway decent is super hard for us. So
that's why we're not doing it.
Yeah. It's been a huge thing to our church. And so we have kept it, partly because I think we follow such a really structured liturgy that people find very comforting.
Yeah.
So to not have
I think that's a major thing
in their life is hard. So, I think one of the things that's been really powerful is Rod just goes on at 11:30 on Mondays and prays for people and tells stories, and I think that's a big deal for both a larger community and ours. So,
yeah,
we do a Wednesday thing and we do a Friday thing online, but they're part of it we're just doing it so we can figure out how we're supposed to run the video and the audio and how that works.
Yeah.
So, but I think those are, and then it's just trying to keep track of your neighbors. I am pretty sequestered because of our housemates' immunity systems, are suppressed because of medications they're on. So, I'm not. Mark and Lane are really the only outside people of my house that I'm connected to. And then we're very careful in going to the grocery store, but we don't have anybody else. But I think actually me going out of the house, everybody else is staying home.
Yeah.
So, I'm the harbinger of death, I suppose. But that's made it hard. I've not even gone to meetings with, 6-foot distancing. The last meeting I went to, turns out 2-3 days later that one of the people in that meeting, though we had it outside, ended up coming down with the virus. So that was difficult.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's rather just trying to keep your head above water, and seeing what works. Like, one thing that actually works really well is after our live stream, we have an invitation that goes out to everybody in the village. And so people this last time everybody jumped on freeconferencecall.com or whatever, because you don't need any apps or whatever. And we had at one point maybe 15 people on talking, and that was good.
Yeah.
That was good in connecting. But I don't know. How about you guys? How are you handling this? What are you doing? What are the structures that you've put in place? How do you feel about it?
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, I think I've got your headline. Let's see. Evangelical mega house church pastor, not really sure what to do, just trying to survive.
Yeah.
There you go. There it is. No. Yeah. So we also are being very careful to kind of follow our liturgy and keep our timing down, the things that people are used to happening at the same times, but in different ways, in a digital space. And so we're utilizing Zoom. At first, we did groups of 10 or under that were the small groups that had met the previous week, so that there wasn't, they weren't introduced to anyone new. We did that for 2 weeks. And then, we're like, well, clearly we need to go beyond that. But we just did that on Sundays, where we sent a video around of the pastor, speaking for that week, sharing kind of key things about the topic. And then our little groups of 10 or under just walked through our whole service together, did all the prayers and the songs, and or if they didn't want to sing, they could read psalms, but they followed the liturgy. And now last week we tried for the first time an all church Zoom call, which we did for the first 20 minutes of our time together, which is 4:30 on Sundays.
How'd that work?
It was great. It was, all things considered, it was clunky and weird, but it was great. We had John was on for the week, and so he got on and kind of welcomed and opened the liturgy. We had everybody muted, so it wasn't crazy. And then we had Mike did a song, and then John did about a 20-minute mini sermonette. And then there was a secondary Zoom call set up for each of our small groups. So then they went into where they prayed and discussed together, and actually got to have the human interaction. So we're trying to make sure everybody still sees one another's faces, because our church is really relational, making sure that they get to talk and be in one another's lives, and then trying to make sure that we follow generally the liturgy that we have. But we've never really believed in being a show or a production. We have our tendencies toward that as everybody else, but that's not a value of ours. And so we've tried to not produce a great online sermon or great online music. We almost want our people to long for that when they get back together. So we've kind of embraced a minimal version of those things for now, and then we'll be able to look forward to getting back together rather than I think what I've gathered from some church leaders is that they really want to have this powerful online presence. And now is the opportunity to cultivate that. And that's just not how we feel. At least I definitely don't. I want to have a powerful in-person presence, and online just as a tool to connect people. So that we're trying to treat it that way. Yeah. So, I mean, so far that hasn't been bad. I have, every once in a while I've taken a walk in which I try to stay 6 feet or so away from somebody if they need a person to talk to. That's something I enjoy, walking outside and getting some exercise. And so I've done that a few times. We've run some errands for neighbors. Of course, in my world, I have 2 small businesses that are closed. And so I'm having to spend a lot of time thinking about, stimulus bills and are these grants or are these loans for small businesses, and how does one apply for them? And is this wise to do or not? So I'm spending an awful lot of time trying to sort through all that.
So yeah, you'll be an expert on the care package there, the care bill.
Yeah, all 880 pages of the stimulus bill.
Systematic theology.
A cool thing about all that is I've been invited into some of the small business leader forums for the city, which is really, I mean, to me is kind of an honor that I'm even on that list. And so, they're gathering people over Zoom, pretty large groups where they'll have experts in the city on the bill and lawyers explaining out the parts that are critical to small business. So I've been tuning into that and, and seeing a few familiar faces on there, and oddly sort of like in a digital space, meeting people I've only heard of before, which is weird.
Sure.
Oh, there's one of the Ronstadts in the room, sort of, So that's been interesting.
Yeah, the village has a strong connection to the Ronstadts.
Oh, that explains it.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Like Keith, my housemate, used to sing with them a lot, and another woman in our church is actually a good friend of hers.
Yeah,
that's pretty funny.
Wow, there you go.
It's weird because they're old and kind of normal people now, and they're not.
Yeah.
And so it's not like the Ronstadts, but the name has like a weird, because it's from my childhood.
Oh yeah, totally. No, I know it's an interesting. Oddly, I was driving my old truck. We took it over to Dairy Queen yesterday, and I have an old truck playlist of stuff that came out around the time the truck was, in its heyday, and a Linda Ronstadt song came on, and Abby and Michaela were like, "Who is that?" And I was like, "Oh, this is our local Tucson country star." So yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
She country claimed her too. But anyway, man. So that's what I mean. Yeah, there's chances to serve neighbors. We're having to take care of our folks in business. Nick is in the same boat. The salon's closed, trying to figure all that out. So for us, there's a lot of layers of how do we take care of people. Obviously, we have people in the restaurant industry or who work at restaurants who are laid off, but trying to navigate what are our options now. And so there's a lot of pulling together over these things. All our small group leaders have been encouraged to make phone calls to all the people within their care. And we were able to divvy up our entire church by only starting really 2 more small groups, which were kind of in the works anyway. And so there really shouldn't be one person who's on our list who's not being followed up with on a regular basis if everybody's doing what they say they're doing. So that's a cool thing. Our first week really involved us just combing through our list and saying, is anybody missing? And are there any people on here who, have moved on or whatever, so we don't overburden one of our leaders, but I think we have the ability to follow through really in person with everybody. And so that presents a lot of opportunities to know people, give input to people.
Sure.
People. Yeah.
That's cool.
So I want my headline to be evangelical pastor combs through his list meticulously and therefore follow-up occurs.
Oh, I see. I was going to give you
the New York Times is going to pick that
pastor competently lays out plan to handle his congregation and small businesses.
Yeah, I like the one where the big attention grabbing clickbait thing is that I combed through a list. I think that's kind of something. I think people are drawn to that. They want to know who's really doing their list.
Oh, that or we could make it controversial and small church pastor arrogantly claims his church is fully covered.
Yeah, that could be it. Yeah, and that would be Eric. I'm sure it breaks down starting with this guy.
Yeah, this whole coronavirus thing is irritating, but it is what it is,
Yeah.
There's another 2 weeks, I suspect, before it hits Tucson.
Yeah, and that's what people are saying. Mid-April, there's a peak. I mean, come on, we haven't done the testing. I mean, it's hit Tucson, we just can't see it.
Well, but our hospitals haven't filled up yet. They are
because we can't see it. Yeah.
So people are not coming in with respiratory issues yet.
Oh, we got 27 people in a nursing home. That's new.
Yep, that was new.
Yeah. So that's that kind of stuff. It's never fun.
No.
Those are the situations that are the worst. Is when you've got a group. I mean, and my mom living in this home of elderly folks, 200 and some, and they keep reporting. We get emails all the time that there are no cases there. They acted really early, which I'm really grateful for. But those are the type of facilities that this particular pandemic makes very vulnerable. So
yeah, no, it moves super fast. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think on that note of confidence, we say goodbye. I think we might as well put this online, huh? Or on YouTube or something, just so people can see how pastoral we look.
Yeah.
And this is a good moment to remind people to, follow us, share the podcast if it's helpful. You can listen to this wherever podcasts are listened to, plus on faithoverbreakfast.com. And if you have something you want us to talk about, email us at faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com or message us through Instagram or Facebook. And that's really all. That's all I got, man. That's all I got.
That's all I have too.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you next time.
All righty. Are we? It says we're still recording on my thing.
We are. So let's quickly do our intro.